Before kings, before borders, before any certainty carved into stone, there was an animal crossing the void. It did not announce its importance. It carried no glory. It inspired no heroic songs. Yet it sustained the movement of an entire world. At a time when the story we now associate with Jesus Christ was still only dust, rumor, and distance, the desert continued to do what it has always done: erase traces, swallow footsteps, destroy promises. And yet, roots existed. Goods arrived. Messages crossed. Empires collected. Peoples survived. This did not happen through courage. It did not happen through faith. It happened because a resilient body, shaped to endure thirst and heat, accepted the weight and kept moving. The camel was the invisible mechanism. Without it, the Middle East of the first century would have been a collection of islands separated by sand. No bridges, no flow, no continuity. We are in the Levant and on the edges of Arabia, in the first century of the Common Era, under the long shadow of Rome and beneath the unforgiving sun of the desert. Judea, Syria, the Decapolis, the routes stretching toward Damascus, Palmyra, Petra, Hegra, and beyond. Paths that today appear as lines on maps, but which at the time were open wounds in the land. The climate was severe. The wind was dry. Water was a decision. Cities clung to springs, wells, and cisterns with the same anxiety with which they clung to walls and guards. Trade was the blood that kept urban centers breathing, and caravans were the veins that crossed the impossible. In this fragile system, the camel was not a symbol. It was living infrastructure. The camel that walked these routes was not an exotic detail. It was routine. It was a tool. It was capital. Its body was designed for absence and interval. The fat stored in its hump was not comfort. It was reserved for when nothing existed. Its nostrils could close against sandstorms. Its eyelashes protected the eyes. Its wide feet distributed weight across unstable ground. It walked without wasting energy, as if every muscle understood that haste was an enemy. And in a world that measured safety by proximity to water, the camel extended the distance between life and death. It did not make the desert kind. It merely made it passable. The camel's function was practical, repeated, daily. It carried water in skins, grain in sacks, salt in blocks, textiles in bundles, ceramics, tools, rare wood, bitumen, resins, perfumes, incense, and myrrh. Goods light enough to seem non-essential until they were missing. It also carried what could not be seen: correspondence, orders, news, records, small economies of survival. When a caravan arrived, it was not only cargo that arrived. It was proof that the world was still connected. The camel was the physical medium of that proof. The day began early, when the air was still breathable and the ground still held a trace of cold. There were restrained sounds, leather being adjusted, ropes tightened, metal striking metal, low voices. The camel rose with a movement that seemed too slow but was only economy. The weight was placed methodically. Nothing could sway. Nothing could cut into the skin. Friction in the desert was a sentence. And then the caravan advanced. The walk was not a march. It was a flow, one step after another, always the same, always calculated, as if the body had been trained to waste not even intention. The sun climbed and the world changed color. The light hardened. Shadows shrank. Heat was not merely heat, it was pressure. Things seemed to lose contour. Distance trembled. The air distorted everything. The camel continued. Breathing was heavy but steady. The smell was dry, animal, heated dust, leather, old sweat. Sometimes the wind arrived carrying fine sand, entering teeth, scraping eyes, clinging to skin. The camel tightened its nostrils, protected what needed protecting, and continued, not out of emotional stubbornness, but because its body was made for this. It carried the world as one carries an inevitable function. When they stopped out of necessity, not relief. Water was measured. There were no baths, no real cleaning, only minimal maintenance. Some camels drank deeply when a source was found. Others waited. The body stored water with ruthless efficiency. The stomach and tissues absorbed the maximum. Then, movement again. Days chained together without meaningful change. The desert offered no variety. It offered repetition. And repetition was the instrument that slowly wore the animal down. The signs of wear appeared first where no one wanted to look. Wounds in areas of contact with loads. Calluses that cracked. Skin irritated beneath the leather. Small lesions that, with dust and heat, could become infection. Inflamed eyes. Dried nostrils. Accumulated fatigue that could not be resolved by a night on the ground. The camel could be resilient, but it was not indestructible. Resilience was merely a way to delay collapse. And every journey was a continuous test, a silent negotiation between body and environment. On longer routes, the camel's life became a circle. Dawn, load, walking, brief stop, walking, heat, dust, night, cold, and then again. The nighttime cold could be as merciless as the daytime heat. The body, still warm from effort, lost temperature rapidly. The open, indifferent sky seemed closer. The camel lay down, chewed slowly, blinked deliberately, recovered just enough to rise the next morning. Nothing there was dramatic. It was simply continuous wear, a kind of erosion that made no sound. The camel also carried people. Merchants, messengers, travelers, pilgrims, soldiers in transit, families migrating. But even when carrying a human, the center of the system remained the animal. Because the body that endured the journey was its own. Humans changed routes when they wished. The camel did not. It was led, directed, demanded, and still it kept pace. Not through moral submission, but through conditioning, training, the owner's necessity, survival in a world that turned life into utility. In the time of Jesus Christ, circulation was political and economic. Rome administered provinces, collected taxes, moved troops, maintained roads where it could, and left the desert to those who knew how to cross it. Cities prospered when caravans arrived. They declined when caravans diminished. The camel was part of this invisible accounting. When a shipment of salt was delayed, food preservation worsened. When textiles failed to arrive, local trade stalled. When grain was diverted, prices rose. And sometimes the reason was simple. An animal fell ill along the way. An animal collapsed. An animal did not rise again. What happened then was not poetic. It was pragmatic. The caravan stopped. The load had to be redistributed. Other camels received more weight than they should. The pace slowed. Risk increased. Water ran out sooner. Decisions became harsh. Sometimes cargo was abandoned to save the remainder. Sometimes the animal was sacrificed so nothing would attract predators or to avoid prolonged suffering. Sometimes it was simply left behind. The desert handled the rest. The system continued, but with scars. In regions where camels were essential to military logistics, fragility was even more evident. Without camels, supplies did not cross certain areas. Without supplies, detachments weakened. A route closed due to lack of animals was not merely a commercial inconvenience. It was a strategic vulnerability. The desert, already a natural barrier, returned to being an absolute one. And civilizations, no matter how organized, did not prosper when flow was interrupted. There was also the invisible risk of disease. An outbreak among animals could spread quickly through herds and caravan hubs. Fever, weakness, wounds that would not close. And suddenly, what seemed routine became crisis. Fewer caravans departed. More cargoes were delayed. Merchants avoided certain routes. Markets felt scarcity. The price of basics rose. Urban life, dependent on regular arrival of necessities, began to strain. It was not an immediate collapse. It was a slow decline, a weakening, as if the body of civilization were losing blood little by little, and the camel was the vessel through which that blood flowed. Over the years, many camels aged while working. Their step grew heavier, joints ached. The hump deformed under repeated weight. Vision could deteriorate. Skin hardened. But the surrounding world offered no retirement. The camel's value was measured by what it could still carry. When it could not, it became replaceable. And yet, even within this harsh logic, there was a silent truth. Each camel carried more than cargo. It carried route stability, the survival of transactions, the continuity of human contacts that seemed grand only because the animal made distance possible. During the 33 years traditionally associated with the life of Jesus Christ, the Middle East was a mosaic of tensions and movements. Messages traveled, stories were told and retold. People crossed regions in search of trade, safety, worship, work. None of this was sustained without logistics. And logistics, in the desert, had a simple name: camel. Religion, politics, and economy appeared abstract, but all required concrete things: water, food, transport, time. And the camel was the body that converted necessity into movement. When we think of that time, we remember what was written and repeated. We remember names, decisions, conflicts. But what sustained daily repetition rarely becomes memory. The camel left no monuments, signed no decrees, was not carved in marble with the insistence granted to leaders. It simply crossed, endured, existed within labor. And this is the kind of existence history tends to ignore, not out of deliberate malice, but because what is essential is so constant that it appears natural. But nothing was natural in that desert. Nothing was guaranteed. Crossing was always a risk. Arrival was always a negotiation with the environment. And the camel was the form life took to maintain movement where movement was improbable. It made the world turn without standing at the center. It made distance shrink without applause. And when it did not appear, it was because everything was working. Invisibility was the sign of success. In the end, perhaps this is what remains: the realization that civilizations were not sustained only by ideas, weapons, or temples. They were sustained by bodies, by muscles, by silent endurance, by an animal that walked while history unfolded around it, indifferent to names, attentive only to the next step. Without it, those 33 years would not have carried goods, nor journeys, nor routes, nor continuity. Without it, the Middle East of the first century would have been narrower, more isolated, more fragmented. And yet, almost no one remembers. Because the camel did not ask to be remembered. It simply carried, until one day the weight was greater than the body could endure. And then the desert erased the rest, as it always has.